In a previous set of PowerPoint slides, we talked about Sigmund Freud's model of the personality, how we have three components to the personality, the id, the ego, and the superego, that are in constant conflict with each other, with the id wanting to run wild in the pursuit of pleasure, the superego demanding adherence to moral principles and becoming a perfect person, and the ego caught in between trying to manage these demands with the realities of the world. Your personality is the outcome of this psychodynamic conflict. And your personality, according to Freud, was pretty well set by the age of 6. And it was the result of how you navigated your way through a series of stages that are known as psychosexual stages of development. At each stage, the satisfaction of id impulses, the type of pleasure that is delivered, is the result of focusing on one particular part of the body. According to Freud, the growing child progresses through a series of stages, and at each stage, the pleasure that the child experiences, the pleasure that the id experiences, focuses on a particular area of the body. It begins with the oral stage, which lasts from roughly the first year to about a year and a half of age, followed by the anal stage, followed by the phallic stage, in which the genitals become the primary focus of pleasure. Assuming you get through all of those stages, at about age 6, the latency period kicks in, where not a whole lot happens personality-wise. And then the goal is to make it to the genital stage, where you have a healthy, fully formed personality. Here's a diagram that illustrates pictorially the kinds of things that are going on at each stage of development. In the oral stage, the child is dealing with wanting oral gratification and either receiving too much or too little. The anal stage is when toilet training occurs, and the child either responds to toilet training that's too harsh or too lax. During the phallic stage, the genitals are the focus of pleasure, and the child is resolving some other issues, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then the latency and genital stages follow, but neither of those are really involved in the formation of personality. The dilemma the person faces at each one of the psychosexual stages of development is walking just the right balance between indulging the id and letting the id run wild. In other words, you need to allow a certain amount of gratification to occur, but at the same time, you have to put limits and constraints on it. And the failure to do that, when you do not resolve that conflict, the person remains fixated at that stage of development, symbolically and really, for the rest of their life. And your personality develops a certain style as a result of that. So what you don't want to do at any stage is under-gratify or over-gratify the needs of the id. Otherwise, you will become fixated. Here's another diagram illustrating how this can happen. In the oral stage, the person can be deprived and treated harshly and not receive enough oral gratification, or they can be overindulged and not learn any constraints whatsoever. During the anal stage, toilet training can either be too harsh or too lax. In either case, the person develops a fixation at this stage, and this results in certain personality characteristics, which I'll talk about in a moment. And in the phallic stage, the person faces a traumatic experience known as the Oedipus complex, and how that gets resolved or doesn't results in a fixation, or can result in a fixation that will last through life. So let me return to the psychosexual stages and describe the results of fixation at each stage. Let's return to the psychosexual stages of development. And let's start with the oral stage. During the first year to year and a half of life, the infant's sexual desires center around the oral region, so the mouth, the tongue, the lips are the source of pleasure. And nursing provides not only nourishment, but according to Freud, the infant is also receiving erotic pleasure as well. Remember that for Freud, all pleasure is ultimately sexual pleasure. Now, the conflict that occurs here is the conflict between the child wanting to be indulged all of the time. The id knows no limits in the pleasure it seeks, but the parent needing to put some constraints on that. And so, depending upon what happens, you can become fixated in one way or the other. If you're overindulged, you may grow up as a person who becomes excessively dependent on other people for gratification. If you're fixated in this way, you're very trusting, very accepting, very dependent on others. You trust that people will be there for you because they always were. They let you have whatever you wanted whenever you wanted it. But you also may be very gullible. In other words, willing to swallow just about anything symbolically. On the good side, you tend to be optimistic. You know that people will be there for you. But you might be prone throughout life to continue to engage in oral pleasures. You might be prone to overeating, or you might smoke too much. Now, if you're fixated at this stage because you have not been indulged enough, you can grow up quite differently. You become a sarcastic, sadistic person. You make biting comments. You can become aggressive because you've learned you can't trust other people. And if you want anything, you have to go out there and take it on your own. So it's a very different personality, but both of these types result from a fixation at the same stage, the oral stage. Fixation that results from toilet training that's too harsh or too lax during the anal stage can result in fixation there and result in an anal character of some sort or other. And so the conflict here is, again, around toilet training, where the child can comply with the authority of the parents by expelling feces at the proper time and place, doing it when the parents want, almost like giving them a gift, if only your parents would be that easy to shop for. Or they can rebel by withholding these feces and expelling them at a different time when the parent doesn't want them to. So it's about control. This is the first time in life where the child has some control over something that other people care about. Time is sometimes known as the terrible twos, because children learn the word no and they become rebellious. Now, depending on the nature of the fixation, the person may become anal retentive. They become very neat and orderly, punctual, stingy, symbolically kind of keeping prized possessions to themselves. But they're very worried about cleanliness, meeting deadlines, doing things on time. At the other end, you have the anal expulsive individual who is very sloppy, doesn't worry about doing things on time, very generous, gives things away. They symbolically spend the rest of their life expelling feces all over the place without any concern for the time or the propriety of it. So depending on the fixation that you get there, you get very different personalities as well. During the phallic stage, the erotic zone switches to the genitals. The child now discovers how much fun they can be, and this now becomes the focus of the id's quest for pleasure. The most important things that happens during the phallic stage is the Oedipus complex. Oedipal feelings are very powerful and maybe the most intense emotional experience of your entire life. They include all of the aspects of a true love affair: passion, jealous rages, desperate yearnings. But it plays out a little differently for boys and girls, so I'll talk about them separately. Let's talk about boys first. The little boy loves and desires his mother, but at the same time, he fears that his illicit wishes will cost him his father's love and protection. And it's at this time that he learns about the physical differences between little boys and little girls. Little boys have penises, little girls do not. And from this, he draws the terrifying conclusion that little girls originally had a penis, but had it taken away from them as a punishment. Now think about this. You're a child whose entire id impulses are geared toward the pleasure that one is getting from one's genitals. And now suddenly you have this terror of having it taken away from you. This terror, this fear of losing your penis is known as castration anxiety. Now, the healthy resolution of this stage of development is coming to terms with the castration anxiety. And the way to do this, the way to reduce this anxiety, is for the boy to abandon his feelings for his mother and replace them with a wish to be just like his father. This is a process known as identification. In a roundabout way, what the child, in a sense, is doing is saying, okay, I can't have my mother, but if I can learn to be just like my father and imitate my father, maybe someday I can have a woman just like my mother. So he learns to delay gratification. He learns to defer to authority. And this is the time at which the superego develops. The child learns there are rules and things that you're prohibited from doing, and that there are authority figures that one has to obey. And therefore, the successful resolution of the Oedipus complex results in the formation of a superego. Now, a very severe, strong superego can result from an unusually strong Oedipus complex. Anyway, the whole thing becomes so frightening that it's completely suppressed. Now, for little girls, it's somewhat different. Like boys, the girls form strong desire for the mother, but also feels love and jealousy for both parents. However, the discovery that she does not have a penis causes intense feelings of inferiority and jealousy, and this is called penis envy. Again, the focus of the child's pleasure world at this time is the genitals, and as much fun as the girl thinks they are, imagine how much better that would be if she had one of those. And so this penis envy becomes an anxiety-arousing, neurotic thing. And if she doesn't resolve this, this can result in neurotic sexual inhibitions, wishes to become like a boy. They either try to beat men at their own game and become castrating females, or in some way or other try to level the playing field. If they can't have a penis, maybe they can even it out by taking away the penises of men. And this can come from outcompeting them in arenas that males usually are better at or thought to be better at. Or it can mean sort of luring men in, taking advantage of them, and then just kind of spitting them out. That's what the castrating female is all about, and that could be the result of a fixation at the phallic stage for women. Now, Freud also believed that because girls don't have to deal with castration anxiety, females develop a weaker superego than males because the superego develops as a result of castration anxiety. Freud had all kinds of negative opinions about women, and I've always found it curious that there are feminists who are also Freudians, but apparently it's possible. So essentially the woman becomes obsessed with her personal appearance and vanity. In other words, she's already felt damage, and so she worries the rest of her life about that happening again. Anyway, so for females, that's how it plays out. For males, the phallic character is the guy who's never quite resolved the castration anxiety, and so he spends the rest of his life constantly reassuring himself and others that castration has not occurred and that he still has the penis that he would be afraid of losing. And so this results in a pattern of behavior that we describe sometimes as macho. The guy behaves in a reckless, self-assured manner, celebrates the sexual conquests of women. In other words, he essentially goes through life symbolically taking the penis out and showing it whenever he can. See, I've still got it. Castration didn't happen. Anyway, if you successfully navigate your way through the oral, anal, and phallic stages without becoming fixated, you do enter the latency period where your personality is fully established. And from now until puberty, really you become more concerned with learning other things, how to ride a bike, how to read and write, how to tie your shoes, the things you're going to need to be a successful adult, but not much is going on with your personality. And you enter the genital stage at puberty where you are healthy, you have a sincere interest in other people, you have appropriate love objects, satisfying careers, and this is the most desirable goal of development, according to Freud.